Thank you. It's an honor today to be here at Columbia Business School to speak to all of you, and many of you I'm sure will end up as many of the retail and industry leaders here with the great tradition of Columbia. So I have to say that I think it's probably one of the most exciting times in retail and will probably represent some of the biggest opportunities. And while it's obviously unstable and slightly scary, I think that this is the time when so many really bright people look at the opportunities and how to see the white space out there to do business in. I'll give you a little background on why I started my company and how I started my company. I started a little over 3 years ago, and I had the wonderful experience to work at Bergdorf Goodman for 7 years. And there I oversaw the fashion, men's, women's, home, accessories, and it gave me an incredibly unique position to see what I have always said is the good, the bad, the ugly, the things that really took off and worked enormously well, things that didn't work at all, and I found it incredibly interesting the amount of money that companies oftentimes would spend on new categories of business or new launches when they really didn't fully understand that business. And I took the approach of understanding what the retailers would want. So with really that in mind, I started the business to help businesses with strategic consulting on how to grow. Sounds kind of basic, but I felt that what had happened was, with my perspective and my experience, that it offered these companies insight. And we work with them on a number of areas, whether that be in positioning their brand, looking at their competitive set, and I'll get into a number of those things, and how they can distribute their product either domestically or internationally. Now, I will have to tell you that I have the utmost respect for Mickey Drexler and think he's absolutely brilliant and an incredible merchant, but I don't think that the department stores are completely dead. I do think they're dead in certain ways and in certain ways that we've known them, but I don't believe that luxury is over. I think luxury is going to be a different definition, and it was well overused and became an ambiguous kind of terminology. So I do feel that the stores obviously are all going through enormous issues. When looking at how to get through and to weather the storm, I thought of what the companies need to do to be competitive. And when I speak about retail or I speak about brands, I'm going to speak of them all in kind of putting them all together, because any really good brand today is opening their own doors. And I think that it's one of the most important aspects of being in business today. And certainly Mickey touched on that it's hard to control your destiny with a department store. And I can now say, being on the other side, it really is hard to control. It can be done, but I think that the voice and the message that you can send by having your own stores is crucial today. And I always felt that the designers having their own stores was probably some of the best discipline for them. They understood more than ever the importance of deliveries and price points and the flow of goods. So when I speak today about brands and I speak about retail, I'm going to use them oftentimes very interchangeably. When I think of the elements with what it will take to be successful today, brands and or retailers are going to have to understand their market placement, understand where they are in the market, and understand what their message is. You know, Bergdorf's is a very unique environment, and I think that it takes another retailer being very different within certainly Manhattan and within the United States, looking at Neiman's and Saks and Nordstrom. The clearer they are with their message and the more they understand their consumer, the better. Pricing structure. I think pricing today is more important than ever. Brands have to have a variety of price points. The retailers have to have a variety of price points to really attract the customer. I don't know that people are never going to buy $800 shoes again. I think they will. I just don't think they will to the rate that they have been in the past. And certainly with the current activity, with markdowns, people have started to question the value of luxury goods. But I nevertheless think that there will be a customer buying that very high end, but it's going to be much less. What we saw happen in the last 6 months was that aspirational customer was hit the hardest. They were striving, they were probably buying goods that were out of their price range, and now they've been hit the hardest. Competitive set, when we think of brands that are going to succeed going forward, or retailers, they have to know what their competition is and how they're going to differentiate themselves. Merchandising. One of the most difficult things, I think, for retail and for brands is to have really excellent merchandisers, because people are not being trained today. And retail and the fashion business is very unique, and as I listened to the panel, who were very astute from a business standpoint, I think you have to have that business discipline and understanding, but there's a part of fashion that can never be quantified. And I think that's the part that's mysterious for so many people, because it's an emotional connection. And the consumer has to be motivated emotionally to buy something. They have to think that their life is never going to be the same if they don't buy that sweater or buy that shoe or that handbag, or that it's going to transform their life. That you can't put into a spreadsheet. And there are great merchants, and I think Mickey is certainly a wonderful example of that, of really understanding his customer and understanding what's going to motivate his customer. But understanding how to put together fashion lines, how to put together a store, whether it be a home store, be an accessory store, or fashion, there is a science to it that's only learned over time. Consumer engagement. To succeed today, you're going to have to be able to engage the consumer, and it's going to be done in different ways. In the past, things have been very dictatorial. You know, not that long ago, it used to be that only a small group of people could go to fashion shows. After that small group of people saw the fashion show, it would be 2 to 3 months before a publication would come out and tell them, you must buy X, Y, and Z for the fall season. Today, with certainly sites like style.com and countless blogs, the consumer's more educated than ever before. They're as up to the minute as any fashion editor has access, and they can make their mind up quicker than anyone. So I think really engaging the consumer in new ways, we're finding that the internet has changed how people are engaged. Their attention span is incredibly short. Their available time to shop is much more brief than it ever has been in the past. The retail footprint will be crucial. Understanding how you're going to set in the retail stores or have your own retail stores, and understanding that very, very well. Expansion opportunities. If you're going to expand in this difficult time, it has to be very well thought through, and it has to be very prudent. And there will be ways for people to expand, whether that be internationally or domestically, from a wholesale level or in new product categories. New concept development. There are many new ways for brands and retailers to grow, and they have to look at those going forward as a means to survive the future. And growth strategy. While growth may be difficult, and some people are thinking that growth might not be possible at all, I think that during this difficult time, it's really going to be about taking this moment to look at how you're positioned. It's probably a very good time to regroup. If a brand has the wrong distribution, now is probably a less painful time for them to pull back on that and to make sure that the brand is viewed by the consumer in absolutely the right way. You know, when I think about some of these attributes, I think of many brands that I saw that were positioned, and they either did it by an innate sense, or they really studied it. But I was able, and going to the, like I said, probably 300 fashion shows a year for a number of years, and probably triple that in showrooms, and seeing how different brands had communicated who they are and what they are. And I draw on a few of them. Tory Burch, who everyone knows, I remember calling her, and I had worked with her at Ralph Lauren in the public relations. She was in the public relations office, I was in the retail office. And I had heard, and known her socially, but heard that she was starting a line. And with everything at Bergdorf's, I was always very adamant that we took pretty much every meeting because you never know what someone's doing, and it's important to see as much as possible. So I called her and I said, Tori, I hear you doing this line. She said, yeah, but I'm not really ready to show anyone. I said, well, I really want to see it before anyone else sees it. And she said, I'm not sure that we want to wholesale the line. I said, okay, but I really want to see it. So I was continuing to pester her, and she said, well, it's in my son's bedroom, in the spare bedroom, and I'm just kind of developing it. And she was developing it with someone that I had worked with at Ralph Lauren named Fiona Couture. So I said, you and Fiona, just show it to me. I just want to see it. So it's one of those things you do have the joy, I think, to see a line and to know you pretty much know within 10 to 15 minutes of seeing almost any line just how solid it may be. And that was one, when we went in, even though she was downplaying it, everything was set. The logo was right, she had a color, she had a concept, she knew who the clothes were. Most importantly, she knew who her customer was, and she knew how to communicate to that customer, and she took a very different approach. And so many times I get approached by brands and they say, well, I don't understand why the retailers aren't buying me or buying more of my line, and it's because it exists in the marketplace. And she saw an opportunity to create something that didn't exist and to price it, even though she and her core customer in her mind could afford to buy designer and did buy designer, she saw the opportunity to do, in essence, a designer line at a contemporary price point. But when you walked into those stores, the first store was downtown on the Lower East Side, when you walked into those stores, you saw them and they didn't have the feeling of a contemporary store. They had the feeling of a luxury store. They had the feeling with the logo that you were buying a luxury logo. And she took that into other product categories, and so that was an enormous success. Something that is much smaller but has been laser focused, and probably because of being laser focused remains a small business. But I remember when we launched Tom Brown, he did something that no one else was doing. He created clothing that was for a young customer. It was a severe silhouette, and still remains a severe silhouette, but he had a message, and he had a logo, he had a store environment, he knew what his colors were going to be, and when we created shops for him, he was very specific about that. So I think taking those as examples, and there's countless other examples I had the pleasure of seeing over the years, those were when brands really took off. When I think about the important objectives, I think knowing your customer, and Mickey earlier spoke about this, it's a shame that so many retailers don't understand the value of being in contact with the customer. Being on the floor and being in the stores is crucial, and the retailers that do that are head and shoulders above everyone else. One of the people that I was fortunate enough to work very closely under was Ron Fresh, who was an excellent merchant when I was at Bergdorf's and now is at Saks. And Ron is a very hands-on merchant, and understanding your consumer is key. I remember because you can get very caught up in the fashion shows. You can get caught up in the moment of fashion, and we would have young buyers with us, and we would go to showrooms, and they would say, oh, it's so chic, it's so fabulous, it's so this, it's so that. And I would often say, okay, so who's wearing it? Because you can get really caught up in it's all fabulous, it's all wonderful, but who's really wearing it? And we would oftentimes profile our customers by people we knew, whether they were celebrities or whether they were well-known customers. We'd say, isn't that like Mrs. So-and-so, or isn't that like X or Y? And I think that really goes back to understanding your retail environment and understanding your consumer, and then ultimately influences how you communicate to them. In department stores, I think as of late, we know that there's been a lot of issues. It's been because it's been easy. It was not so difficult to do business and to have double-digit increases. We had the pleasure of seeing that for a long time. But now I think people are having to really think out of the box and look at how they assort their stores and how they speak to their customer. What had happened when I first started in retail, and as I said, I worked in retail with Ralph Lauren for 10 years, Ralph always pushes. And it's amazing how hard he pushes, and to understand who you're designing for and what the shopping experience is going to be. What has happened in retail is certainly when I got to Bergdorf's in '99, we talked in a way about customers being designer customers. We said, well, no, they're a second floor customer, they only buy designer labels. We talked about the contemporary customer, oh no, they just shop the contemporary floor, or there was a designer customer. All of those preconceived ideas of how consumers shop today have really been erased in a lot of ways. The consumer, because of either them being educated or more confident, are comfortable in shopping in multiple environments. And certainly with hard economic times like this, they are more than happy to shop around. And whether that's the designer customer looking on the contemporary floor or the designer customer going to H&M or Target. Now, we used to say that really doesn't happen, but we know that it does happen to some degree. The philosophy, though, has changed within the designer way that they were positioning their businesses. I remember going to the contemporary shows, and you generally, and we used to say, well, do we really need to go to contemporary shows? It's kind of trends that we saw the season before, or it was dummied down, or this, that, and the other. What's happened in the contemporary market is they've become as fashionable, and even more so sometimes, than the mainline high-end luxury designers. And so they've offered fashion that is up to date, that is leading the pack. And when I think of young designers that have been very smart in the market, I think as in the last few seasons, Philip Lim, who has taken very much a designer approach at a contemporary price, Alexander Wang, who has taken a designer approach at a contemporary price. And these designers, the quality is good. They're not obsessed with production being all out of Italy. They've been very open to how they've sourced their goods. But the most important thing is that the style has been there and the message has been there. I think department stores are going to continue to have the struggle, and even more of the struggle, of looking the same. And I'm probably a lot more sympathetic than Mickey is because of being on the other side. It's difficult. It's difficult to take 150,000 square feet and to make it look unique and special all the time. It's difficult because the big brands that are out there understand how important it is to deliver their message. And they become very unwavering in how they want to be positioned in the store and how they want to have their shops shown and their products shown. But I do think that with the future of department stores, they're going to have more exclusive product. They're going to have to communicate it in a different way, and they're going to have to create a different shopping experience than what they have now. How can they do that? They have to think out of the box. And it's never easy. And we were speaking earlier, and we said, was it easier 10 or 15 years ago to take chances? Maybe, but I don't know that it's ever been easy. In 1999, Bergdorf said it was one store, and it's really great because it's one store, because you don't have to worry about 50 stores, and that's a real luxury. And we ran out of room for our cosmetics on the ground floor. And we talked about it, and it was in this dark room on 57th Street that it had been for a number of years, and we literally just ran out of space. And we couldn't build up on the building, we couldn't build below, and we had a stock room that was the basement, which was less than livable for a stock room, much less anything else. And we decided that we wanted to put the beauty level in the basement. Now that might sound really basic to you, but no one had done that at that point. No one thought that you could ever put a beauty level or a beauty area, cosmetic area downstairs, because what was always said was that you had to have it on the ground floor because they had to walk in to get their lipstick, and if they couldn't get their lipstick and their cream, they wouldn't be shopping in your store. But we felt otherwise. And we said, let's think out of the box. Let's create the ultimate environment. We took what was the current size and made it 4 times as big in the basement, and created treatment rooms, created a whole area for fragrance, created a nail salon, which went out, but at least we tried to do it and it went out of business. We created a floral, we had a major florist come in, again that lasted but then went out of business, but hey, we tried it. And we did see that getting the brands down there was enormously difficult. The amount of meetings we had with Chanel and Estee Lauder was unbelievable. And they looked at us as if we'd had two heads. Because they said, how can you, it was almost inconceivable that we were saying we wanted to put their brand in the basement. What we did once we got them to eventually somewhat agree to it, we created a great atmosphere that drove people, that we hoped would keep people down there. And the first 6 months, I think we all felt we made an enormous mistake. We thought, it seemed like a good idea, but no one's going down there. We even thought about taking both escalators and putting them down so that people would be forced to go downstairs. But then we realized that could be a fire hazard. But we were having a really hard time. What happened, though, within 1 year after marketing and communicating it and driving people down there, we found that the average sale went from $36 to $98 in 1 year. Because we found if we got them down there, they didn't run in and grab the lipstick, that they really shopped, and that this was a complete environment for them. So I use that as an example of something that is, and this was certainly not me, it was a great team of people at Bergdorf's that thought of this and wanted to take chances and did so. And I think that with retail and department stores today, you're going to have some unexpected, something that is going to really motivate the customer to see you differently than everyone else. The other real challenges with department stores today is customer service. I think even in good times, it's one of the hardest aspects of running a retail store is having good salespeople that are educated. It is something that when it's really great, it changes your business. And with salespeople that know how to explain a product in a large box environment, if they can, meaning a large department store, if they can explain the product, you're miles ahead. One of the saddest things that it was just from working in big spaces was that there were great products that I knew would never take off because they were too complicated to sell. They would rely too much on a talented salesperson, and this is where specialty stores did particularly well. Now with what's happening with the economy and the cutting back of staff, I think we're going to have even more challenges today, as well as the consumers going to the internet to be educated and sold. And we're also seeing TV retailing growing substantially over the last few years. Not that they've had an easy time of it as of late, but people like Mindy Grossman at HSN has done a tremendous job at positioning her television network in a way to connect with that customer, and she's broken a lot of barriers to that the customer is some person that sits on their couch that has no taste and doesn't know what's going on. This is oftentimes a busy mother, busy professional woman who does have taste, who when she turns on the television, all of a sudden she's hearing from the designer himself or someone that's credible. And you think how hard that is to do today in a retail store. So new ways to shop. I think the online retailing has been a tremendous change, and it's interesting to see the incredible editorial voice that some of the online retailers have taken. And I would say that Net-a-Porter, when I look at how they have almost made a magazine come to life, that has been something that has been tremendously successful for them. They're not just online selling product. They're telling you what to do with the product, how to wear it, the background on it. It's a wonderful way of being a retail site. And also off-price retailing. One of the big shining stars in the last year and a half has been Gilt Group. And I only know this because I have a staff who is incredibly good at shopping. Generally at full price, although they're not particular. And I didn't know really what was going on other than I noticed every day at 12 o'clock there were no phone calls. No one was saying a peep, and we have a relatively chaotic office because they were all on Gilt Group. And Gilt Group drove everyone to that site at a specific time because it created a sense of urgency. And you didn't want to miss out on something. And I think that positioning that off-price retailer, and it's positioned in a very luxurious way. They don't hide that they're off-price, but they're positioned and you feel that it's not that you're just buying a commodity somewhere. You could be buying on any full-price site. I touched on TV retailing and how that's changed, and we've seen also viral marketing. We've seen the emergence of passing on information to their peers and their friends. We've seen blogging happening where people all have an opinion, some good, some bad, but everyone can be an expert. But the ability for this to be passed faster than traditional advertising has been very impressive and something that I'm sure retailers will be paying a great deal of attention to. I touched a little bit on the cross-shopping and today how the consumer psyche has changed on that. I remember knowing Isaac Mizrahi for a long time, and as you probably know, Isaac had a high-end luxury runway collection for many years. It was then shut down, and he did not produce the collection, and then started with Target, who was one of our clients as well. We work with Target very closely. But this was when I was at Bergdorf's. He started at Target, and it was quite controversial at the time. But he did a nice business. And then Isaac came to me and he said, this was about 5 years after he started his Target collaboration. He said, I'm servicing a client out of my studio that's buying these $5,000 and $6,000 dresses. They're all made to measure. And I open the studio when I can, but would you consider perhaps carrying it at Bergdorf's? I said, well, hold on. Supposedly his brand was tarnished and it was bad and this and that because he had sold out. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt like it was right. And this was something that at the time Ron Fresh had just left for Saks, and I was working with Bert Tansky, and Bert said, this is absolutely wrong. Bert always gives you a lot of freedom, but he said, this is wrong. Our customer does not want to buy a product that's sold at Target. And I said, yeah, but it's different. And I said, Michael Graves makes teapots, but people still want to buy his houses. I really think there's something here. And we did end up putting Isaac into Bergdorf's, and then to even add insult to injury, we had agreed to do a runway show with Target, mixing some of the $5,000 pieces with some of their pieces, and it was at Cipriani. And everyone from Anna Wintour right on down showed up and thought it was brilliant. And it was really that was Isaac's idea to mix all those, and the customers become much more comfortable with that. I think that Target and bringing in the Go Target international collections has benefited enormously. They've really positioned themselves as the fashion retailer at mass. And for many of the designers, it's been a win-win. They've gotten their name out there. They've benefited from millions of dollars of advertising, and they've also gotten nicely rewarded for their efforts. So in the tough times, I certainly believe there will be many opportunities, but it's going to be in unconventional ways. And unconventional businesses. One of the businesses that we deal with, and we deal with a number of businesses at a number of different levels, and that's the exciting part of what we do in the office. While I always love the luxury side of it, I've now found the other side, the more broadly distributed or mass side, extremely appealing. And what a client like Target does is really revolutionary. In one of the businesses that we deal with, when I first left Bergdorf's, I know someone for many years, Adam Dell, who's Michael Dell's brother, who I know Adam either teaches or has spoken many times here at Columbia. And Adam came to me and he said, I'm not a fashion person, but I bought this internet company. And he said, and I think it's a really good idea, but I know it's not positioned correctly. It's called Bag, Borrow, or Steal. He said, would you consider working with us? And I said, well, tell me about the concept. And the concept is really, in a way, what Netflix is. It is for handbags. It was originally started by an editor from Vanity Fair who was an accessories editor, and she saw how everyone would borrow bags and do this and thought there might be an opportunity on the internet for people to do the same sort of thing, to buy bags, to borrow bags, and to carry them and to be able to return them and to offer them for a fractional amount. Now, I was really torn with this, I'll be honest. I mean, coming from Bergdorf and thinking, okay, wait, you're renting handbags and it's luxury, but I knew it was a good idea, and I kept thinking this is really a good idea. And when you think about vacation homes, there are a lot of people that go to places like St. Bart's that are never going to buy a home there, but certainly rent them and enjoy them. There are, interestingly enough, BMWs. 10 years ago, only 20% were leased. Today, almost 78% of BMWs are leased. So it's a different way of thinking, and it probably reaches a customer that would not be there and introduces them to luxury brands. What's happened is they've raised now 3 rounds of 40, and now they're up to $40 million in funding. It's grown enormously. It was featured on Sex and the City, the movie. I don't know if you saw it. Jennifer Hudson walks in with a handbag, and Sarah Jessica Parker said, oh, I've been wanting that handbag. I couldn't get it. How did you get it? And she said, Bag, Borrow, or Steal. Now, they didn't have to pay for that, which was really an amazing feat. But this business has seen increases, certainly with the current economic climate, in ways that they've never anticipated, and growth that they've never anticipated. With them, when we first started working with them, about 70% of their business was in opening price goods, meaning under $500, Dooney and Burke, Kate Spade, Coach. Now, 80% are in handbags, $1,500 and over. So Gucci, Saint Laurent, we can go on Prada. We also put jewelry on the site, which has been enormously successful. We've put a vintage area, which we have a curator from Doyle Gallery, and we have vintage Hermes crocodile Birkin bags to vintage Gucci. So while this is a very unconventional business model, now the buys for some of these accounts are in the $500,000 to $750,000 range at wholesale. To put that in perspective, there are only a handful of brands at Bergdorf Goodman that we spent that much on. Also emerging markets. My experience since leaving my little home of 57th and 5th Avenue has been much broader. We've been working in Qatar on a 985-acre man-made island that's a luxury island. Now, Dubai has been enormously hit, as you all know, but Qatar has not. It will be, for many brands, an enormous opportunity to grow. We also work with SK Network in Seoul, Korea, which is a telecommunications and energy company that does $60 billion annually, publicly traded. They came to us, and 2.5 years ago, they put $11 billion aside for a prestige division, which distributes cars, wine, and thank goodness fashion. So we work with them. We've also been working with Target Australia. When Target Australia came to us, and I bring this up because it's about thinking about new opportunities. Target's a very odd Australia's a very odd market. They're opposite seasons because of duties and freights. They almost, the merchandise is almost double what it costs here in the States. So your average Chloe dress is $3,000. They don't have much designer distribution at all, but they have some of the strongest fashion magazines and readership of fashion magazines and brand awareness of any country. Now, there are only 20 million people there, so it's not a lot of people in a continent that's not far off from the size of the U.S. But Target is not an affiliate of Target here. It was a gentleman's handshake 20 years ago, and I'm sure they regret it now, Target US. But at any rate, it's been run as a separate division. They share the logo, and they came to us and they said, we really want to do designer collaborations, but we're not really sure how to structure the deal. We don't really know who to go after, and could you help us with that? And we said we would be happy to. The first one, we went to Stella McCartney. Stella's business was well less than $1 million a year at retail, and with her collection business in Australia. So with the right, and I'm giving you really the short version, with the right marketing strategy, the right positioning with the product, and it was beautifully done. The artwork was done by her sister, who's a well-known photographer. It was beautifully done. They did a runway show, enormous lead up, and then the first day at Target, it was supposed to last for 6 weeks, they sold $14 million in one day of product at Target. Nothing like that had been done. Consequently, her fragrance sales went skyrocketing in Australia, as well as her collaboration on her yoga line. So while these are unique and unusual growth opportunities, I think they represent what will be out there in the future. Thinking outside of the box and being willing to take chances and really being creative.